Hello everyone, and welcome to our cat treat cooking show webinar with Miss Loni. Hi, Miss Loni.
Hi guys, how are you?
I'm Sarah Muriella with Pasadena Humane, and we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Those of you who have joined us before for our kids webinars know that we do a little bit of webinar housekeeping. So I just want to share with you a few reminders to help you along during this webinar. Okay, so first, if you haven't done so already, you're going to want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. You can ask a parent or guardian to help you out with that. And that's because Miss Loni is going to start with the bake recipe first. So the oven should be at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. As a reminder, we're not going to be able to hear you because you're automatically muted. But you should be able to hear us. And also we can't see you, but you should be able to see our screens and also Miss Loni as she is baking. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can do that by using that chat box on the left. So you're going to enter your question or type in your question or have a parent or guardian type in your question in that box. We ask that you please do not raise your hand. So you'll see that little hand symbol on the right side. If you use that, that's only if you're going to be speaking, and we're not using that feature for this webinar. So please don't raise your hand. Instead, use the chat box to submit any questions. We want to remind you that we have another free kids webinar coming up on June 30th. That is Taking Care of Kittens. And Miss Loni and one of our kitten nursery managers, Chris Ramone, are going to talk all things kittens. So they're going to help you learn what to do if you find kittens and how to take care of them. Now, I believe all of you should have gotten the ingredients and instructions for both of these recipes in your confirmation and registration emails, but we want to remind you again for the first recipe, which is the bake recipe, you're going to need a can of tuna in water. You can also use chicken in water or any kind of wet cat food. A tablespoon of dried catnip, if you have it. Miss Loni's going to talk a little bit about that. That will be optional. Water, some coconut flour or oat flour, 1 egg, and some light olive oil. And then for the no bake recipe, so this will not require baking in the oven, you're going to need a ½ cup of tuna in water. Again, it could be chicken in water or wet cat food. A ½ cup of oats. Optional will be a 1/4 cup or a 1/4 of a carrot or some peas, and again, some light olive oil. Okay, and I will put the ingredients in the instructions in the chat box once Miss Loni gets started so you can have them there. We want to remind you if you don't have time right now to bake along with Miss Loni, you're going to receive an email tomorrow with a link to this recording of this webinar. So for today, if you just want to follow along and listen, but you don't want to bake, no problem. You can always watch this webinar again at a later date. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Miss Loni.
Hi everyone, thank you Sarah, thank you for outlining all of that. I am so excited to have you guys back with Pasadena Humane. Miss Sarah actually outlined everything that we have available, so these are kind of all the ingredients for the bake recipe, and I want to remind you that this one is especially stinky and messy, so I actually have a towel here that I use. So it's really cool. It's my little Dodgers towel. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to put it over my shoulder so that I don't have to keep moving back and getting like paper towels or anything like that. I can just kind of wipe my towel right on my shoulder here. So like Miss Sarah had said, these are all the ingredients we're using. Make sure that you also have a can opener so you can open your can and have your parents happy with that, because the edging here can be really sharp. So just make sure that someone's watching you while you're doing it. And also, we're going to have a little like a spoon or a fork or something to mix with our bowl here. I would recommend using a large bowl because this gets really messy, and even though it's not that many ingredients, they'll kind of flow over and they might kind of come out and get you dirty. So just making sure that your bowl is kind of pretty big just to do a really good mixing job. So like Ms. Sarah said, we're starting by preheating the oven 350 degrees. And so let me go ahead and get started. I'm using a can of tuna, but you can also use chicken, or you can use wet canned cat food as well. All of it's pretty stinky. Chicken's less stinky, I would say, just because you can kind of like strip it and it just doesn't have the same smell, but tuna is super stinky. And we are keeping it in the water. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dump this tuna in the water, like so. And then I couldn't find the catnip. I went to 3 stores and I thought they'd have catnip. I didn't go to pet stores, but I went to organic food stores where I thought they would have it, and I've bought it there before. They didn't have it, so that's okay. You don't have to use it. You can use it, but it's an option as well. I am also going to, just like I did in the last recipe, is you want to make sure that you don't put too much liquid in any of your recipes, because it's harder to kind of take away the liquid. If it's too wet, it's hard for everything to bind together. And by binding, that means it sticks together. And you want things to stick together really well when you cook them or non-cook them, because you're going to feed them to your animal and you want them to be consistently very strong together. So I am going to take some water. This is only a tablespoon, and keep in mind that this already has liquid in it. So this is just a tad, and we can always keep adding, but I'll just do a little bit like that into my recipe. And then there's coconut flour. So this is organic coconut flour that I actually got from Sprouts. I really like Sprouts. They have a lot of really great options. I know they have the rolled oats, which is here, and we're going to be using that for the non-bake recipe. But I really like these rolled oats. They seem to be really good binders when we're making these animal treats in general. So I recommend this very much. So we are using 1 cup. So this is my cup. Make sure that you have the whole set. They have a cool little set you can get so you can cook. So, and I'm going to take my time because I know some of my friends like to do this with me, and I want to make sure that you guys know that, like, it's okay to make a little bit of mistakes for this. It doesn't have to be perfect. The great thing about cooking is you can keep practicing. And so I did it over my bowl so that you could, it can kind of just flow in case you make any sort of mistakes or accidents you feel, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it in here. Put that away. And this is super important. You got to learn how to crack an egg. So I've been cracking eggs very, very long time. So I would use actually this edge for an egg, and all you have to do, kind of tap it like so. You can practice, and just make sure you don't get any shells in here. If you do, you can kind of scoop them out. There you go. So crack my egg. Check it out. And then it says 1 tablespoon olive oil. So here's my tablespoon again. I really don't use tablespoons, guys. I'm just doing it for you guys. I usually eyeball it. So this is a tablespoon, and this is actually going to act to help bind it as well. So we'll see kind of how I feel about it when I do it, because once I do it, you can kind of feel, you can add more things to it if you feel like the recipe's too watery and it's not going to work. So we're going to go ahead, and that's pretty much it for this recipe, other than the catnip I didn't put in. So we're just going to mix it, and it gets kind of crusty. I would say that this recipe makes about 12 crouton-sized treats for your cat. So you want to make sure that they're crouton-sized, which is about this big. And I'll show you an example in a little bit, because I did make this recipe already, just to make sure that you guys, so we were set for it for this recipe plan today. So mix it really well, and see, it kind of clumps up a little bit. I found that the bake recipe was a little bit harder than the non-bake. It felt like this one kind of broke off too much. So this one requires more patience. So if you want to make sure that you have your friends or your parents or somebody, your brothers and sisters helping you with this, because these actually take a lot longer than the dog treat. Dog treat, you can kind of lay it flat and you can cut cool patterns out of it. This one definitely takes a lot more time. So mixing it, that's how it looks, super sneaky. So the next part, a lot of kids are really gonna like, because you get really dirty. It's like making Play-Doh. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a plastic little flat plate. It's pretty gross. And you're gonna get a plate. I just have a simple white plate. Put it right in front, and you're gonna become a cat treat making factory. So as you can see, it's really kind of gross. Did I say that? So I kind of smashed it together like this, just because I felt like it was easier to kind of assemble the smaller pieces when you just create kind of a little mountain. And this is actually pretty fun. It's just kind of smelly. And then you take a chunk, and you can kind of see, you just kind of can eyeball it, and you sort of just turn it, turn it, turn it, and it creates these little balls like that. Done. So I'll go a little faster, but if you want to take your time and do this, this can be really time consuming. And like I said in the last webinar, it depends on how big you make your treats, really. That determines how many you'll actually have to give out. So we can keep working on these. I have a cat, his name is Claudio, and he liked the wet ones better than the dry ones. I think it's really different for each cat. We all kind of know that cats can be very particular about what they like and what they don't like, and specifics as to what they eat and what they won't eat. My cat definitely loves tuna, but certain cat foods he won't eat. So if your cats, for whatever reason, don't dig this and don't eat it, it's okay, don't worry about it. Cats are kind of finicky when it comes to these kinds of recipes. So this also kind of making this kind of gives the oven some time to preheat, kind of be ready for you when you put it in like this. And then I feel like I did this recipe better than the last time, but it looks really good. I really like how they're coming out. You can see I'm getting pretty good at this. So another minute, so I can give you guys time to work on them yourself. I feel like this recipe feels a lot easier than the dog one had a lot more. I feel like a little bit more ingredients, but this one is very straightforward. It's all wet, other than putting in the oats or the flour. That's pretty much all of the dry ingredients for the cat webinar treats. So let's see. I have about 10 there. So actually this made a lot more this time around. I think it's because for this one, I used a can of tuna versus the next one, it's half a can of tuna. And with that one, since it's the non-bake recipe, I think that one's the one that you kind of have to be more careful with how the ingredients come out, because you freeze that one. And this one actually goes in the oven. So let me show you. This is kind of what it should look like. You can make them smaller if you'd like. And then let me show you what the after will look like. So this is our wet before you put it in the oven. And then I have sort of what it looks like when it's dry. So this is after you take it out of the oven and it's baked. You bake it for 12 to 15 minutes. I would recommend baking it for 12 minutes, and it depends on how hot your oven cooks. It's just like anything. Different ovens will cook differently at different temperatures. So even if it says like, bake at 350 degrees, if you put it in for 16 minutes, it might like burn everything. So you have to be really careful. And as you become a cook and a chef, you'll start to understand how your oven sort of works and the things that you can do in your oven and sort of how you want to adjust the levels in your oven. So that's my bake. That's the before, and this is the after. So the next recipe is the non-bake. So let me get everything out. We can kind of get everything out together. So I have a new bowl. I'm going to use the same spoon just because it's the same thing. I have a half cup that I need to use. So have your half cup ready. And I have a 1/4 cup as well. So let me get that out. We need water, same thing, olive oil. I already used my can opener for both, so I'm ready to go. And the only difference is I am using the rolled oats for this one. And I'm using a grater. I love graters. Graters are awesome. Make sure that when you are grating with your parents or someone that knows how to use a grater and is really good at it, because what could happen is you could cut your fingers here, and these are really sharp. So just be really careful with that. So here we go. Where's my tuna? Okay. So again, here's my cup. So we're going to use half a cup of tuna. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to put half of this in there. Move this out of the way so you can see. Half a cup. Oops, Miss Loni just put the whole thing in there. Okay. There we go. Half cup. And then a half cup of rolled oats. So this is your half cup. Remember to do it over your bowl. So if you make any mistakes, it's no big deal.
And we just want to remind everyone that the instructions and measurements and ingredients are all in the chat. I know a lot of you have been referring to that, so that's fantastic. But just as a reminder, it's right there in the chat for you as Ms. Loni goes step by step.
And then I'm going to actually put this to the side. I actually want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to take another plastic sheet. So you should kind of have these on hand. I'm going to grade. I'm going to grade a carrot. So this is the 1/4 cup that we're using. This is actually optional. You can also use peas. And the peas are small, so you can kind of smush them up if you want to throw them in. But when you smush them, just smush them in a 1/4 cup and then throw them in your bowl. I opted for carrots, but like I said, they're optional. You don't have to put the vegetables in there if you don't want to. And then let me go ahead and get my, it's not a large carrot. It can maybe about this big, use half a carrot. So I'm going to show you, so I can go ahead and grate it a little bit. I already did some of it. Just be really careful that the closer your hand gets to the end, the more likely it might get a little, cut. So just be really careful, guys, when you're doing it. So I'm good with that. And I already did a bunch of it, so that's why I'm only doing this amount right now. So let me top it off with that. And then let me throw that in. And then the last thing we're doing is the olive oil. And the olive oil, like I said, if you guys remember, it binds it. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. So I just go 1/1000. That's about it. For me, that's what usually works. So if you say 1/1000, that's usually like just like a little drop. We'll use our little mixer again. Make sure to break up all the little tuna chunks. See, it's not very much. There we go. And just making sure, yeah, that's all I needed. Then we're just dumping it again. Like so. Then we're grabbing another plate and it's treat making again. So get yourself ready for the grossness and take a shower after. Okay, there. So actually I'll do what I did in the last one, smush it. It doesn't smush the same though as the other one now that I'm realizing it. This one actually takes a little bit more work to keep it together, but it does bind better because of the oats. So I just kind of go around over and over to create the little ball. These are a little bit bigger, I feel. So this is actually
Miss Loni, if someone wanted to roll out either of the mixtures from either the bake recipe or the no bake, they could potentially kind of roll out the mixture and use a cookie cutter, for example, if they wanted to, right?
They totally could. I feel like this was this recipe said crouton size. So for me, my assumption was you just could smush them in little croutons. So if you don't want to be messier, or if you wanted to have a design, you potentially could just smash it out like this. The only thing I will say with that is that you're probably going to have to use more olive oil and probably a little more oats or more flour for these recipes, so that the contents of the recipe bind better. Because then after, when you kind of put in whatever cookie cutter you're using, you want to make sure that that's all really packed hard and flat. So you have to make sure to like really press hard and really compress everything in order for that to happen. So totally, yeah, you could totally do that. So initially not forgot, but for the bake recipe, I would say after it's done cooking and you have it out, to keep it for no longer than about 7 days. It's kind of the same thing for this one. You don't want these sitting around for too long. So try to give them to your cat within a week. And if not, then just make new ones, just to make sure that, you know, some of this, like the tuna, just want to make sure that we're just feeding our animals stuff that's fresh and not stuff that's just sitting around for a long time.
We know that some of you have cats at home that you're baking treats for, but if you have any other cats that you're baking for, maybe neighbors' cats or family's cats, we'd love for you to share your photos. So we're going to give you an email address so you can tell us like how you used your cat treats that you made today. And also, if you're on social or if you have a parent on social, you can always tag us in any photos or videos of you doing any Kids for Animals activity through Pasadena Humane. So we're going to give you that information in the chat in just a minute.
Please do that, you guys. I actually want to say thank you so much to the awesome teachers that I know that have reached out, and a bunch of awesome students that have contacted me, as well as many people who have hashtagged us at Pasadena Humane on Instagram and that have shared their photos with us of them actually doing this with me. It's really cool to know that like I'm not alone doing this, that you guys are actually doing the projects that we're doing. We have a lot of really amazing content coming up in the coming weeks for summer, and a lot of more interactive projects and activities that are nature-based and really exciting because it's like outdoor stuff, so that we're not all just sitting in front of the computer screens for hours. That's definitely not something we want to do this summer. I definitely want to see you guys, but I also want to have programming that reflects us being outside and taking care of animals and being kind of knowledgeable about the wildlife around us, because I think it's really important for us to appreciate that right now. So this is how they're all kind of coming out. I really like this one. Maybe it felt messier the first time for me because it was the first time I did it. I'm probably just getting better at it because it doesn't feel as messy this time. But it's definitely a hands-on one. You could definitely, if you wanted, thought about it, you could use a spoon. So if there's, I know I have a lot of friends, a lot of little friends who don't like getting messy or dirty. You could definitely use a spoon to kind of help you make, you know, smaller ones and ones that are probably a little bit smoother. There's a lot of different techniques you can have, and then as you start cooking, you'll get comfortable with little tips and tricks that you're probably going to learn about the way you like to cook and what you like to do in the kitchen. So these are looking really good, actually, and I will show you in a minute what they look like when they come out of the freezer. So you can put them in the freezer for 2 hours before you actually serve them to your cat. And you can put them in there for longer, but you should make sure that you allow them to defrost, which means that whenever you put something in the freezer for a long time, you have to make sure that the moisture leaves it and it melts off so that it can actually be edible, like you can bite into it. So I would say no less than 2 hours initially when you put them in the freezer. And then if you're going to have them in there longer, just make sure to defrost them before you give them to your animal. And you can always check them yourself, and you can feel them to make sure that they're actually palatable, which means that they're edible. They're able to have animals where people eat them. So this is how it'll look. And remember, now we're putting that in the freezer. But let me show you. So I just left it in the bag, but this is kind of what it would look like if you had it in the freezer. Put them together. And I've had these out for about, I don't know, 20 minutes. So they're still not, I mean, they could eat them, but cats probably not going to eat something that's super cold just because they're super picky. So yeah, let me show you them all. So these are no bake, and these are after when they're frozen. Check them out. I'm excited to give them to my cat and see if he likes these better than the ones last week. Maybe I'll get lucky. And these are the cooked version of our baked ones. So yeah, I'm happy with them.
They look so fantastic, Miss Loni. I wanted to just remind everyone that if you're interested in joining us for any future webinars, please do so at pasadenahumane.org/kidsathome. I put the URL in the chat. This summer, we have a online kids club plan starting week of July 6th for kids ages 7 to 11. And so we're hoping to get that started. We'll have registration up in a couple weeks, so please go ahead and check that out. In the meantime, we have a ton of activities, worksheets, videos in Spanish and English available for you. And we really look forward to seeing you next time. Miss Loni, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Sarah, and thank you guys so much for tuning in again. I think this is something I'm really looking forward to expanding on, and I hope that you guys are really using these for our wonderful animals. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next time. Bye.
Bye.